Hello, everyone. Let's have more news about the Lakers. But first, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Although they fell way short of their chief goal to win a league title in the 2024-25 NBA season, the Cleveland Cavaliers' first year under head coach Kenny Atkinson was one for the books. After winning 48 games in the previous campaign, Donovan Mitchell and the Cavs made a huge leap, erasing any doubts on whether the transition to Atkinson from JB Bickerstaff would backfire right away, as they won 64 contests against only 18 losses. Atkinson didn't do it all by himself on the sidelines for the Cavs, but one of his best assistants also just left, with Jordan Ott getting the opportunity to be an NBA coach for the first time after getting hired by the Phoenix Suns. Now the search is on for the Cavaliers to find a replacement for Ott, and one potential candidate is a former LeBron James teammate in the form of Jared Dudley, according to NBA insider Mark Stein. Via the Stein line, the Grizzlies, meanwhile, are not the only team to have shown interest Dudley. After 4 seasons on Jason Kidd's staff in Dallas and a 14-season career as a player, Dudley is also seen as a target for newly named NBA Coach of the Year Kenny Atkinson in Cleveland, as Atkinson looks to replace Jordan Ott, who this week was officially named as the Suns' new head coach. Dudley played for 7 teams in the NBA, spending his final 2 seasons in the league with the Lakers, with whom he won a ring in 2020. He appeared in only 2 games for the Lakers in the 2020-21 campaign before starting a career in coaching. He became part of Jason Kidd's Dallas Mavericks coaching staff in 2021 and still is, as of this writing. Dudley's coaching experience in the NBA isn't that extensive, but given the buzz he's generating, he's someone who seems to be viewed in high regard around the coaching circle. Now let's go to another video. Don't forget to leave a like.
And how it has been amplified in the NBA.
A ring is a team accomplishment. Right. I don't know where it started. It's just it's a long conversation, especially when it comes to me individually. I don't know why it's discussed so much in our sport. You tell me, Allen Iverson and Charles Barkley and Steve Nash, our wasn't unbelievable. Like, oh, they can't be talked about or discussed with these guys is because this guy won 1 ring or won 2 rings or won, like, it's just weird to me. It's like saying Peyton Manning can't be in the same room with Brady or Mahomes because he only has 1 ring. Barry Bonds never won a World Series. And you can't sit here and tell me that he's not the greatest baseball player to ever touch a bat.
Okay, so very interesting, obviously, and a part of the sports conversation that has been going on certainly as long as I've been here, which goes back to the late 90s. To clean up just one quick thing he said there, Peyton Manning won 2 Super Bowls, the one at the very end, but that's not really the most important part, of course. Winman, let's start with you. As you hear LeBron James, someone that you've been covering since he was a teenager, in that conversation, what's your reaction?
I happen to agree with him. And right now, I'm at the end of a 2-month run where I've been on the front line in the playoffs. And I know what it takes to win an NBA championship because I've watched team after team after team over the last 20 years, talking to players, even just in the last couple of days, about how exhausting it is. And it's why I never believe in ever, under any circumstances, pulling down or denigrating a champion by attaching an asterisk or something. But I will just say, as the only other thing, LeBron contributed to this with his movement in his career to join super teams and his infamous comments, not 5, not 6, not 7. In that situation, he sort of set a standard to change the conversation.
Yeah. It is fascinating that it is LeBron James making these statements, and I can't pretend. I want everyone to chime in on this because this applies in all sports across the board. I can't pretend that I know what it's like to have my every move dissected the way he does. We all get some of that. But LeBron James, literally everything he's done, every decision, both the big ones and all the others, are dissected constantly. So I don't know what that's like, and I don't know what it is he hears on a day-to-day basis. But let's just dive into that. Is it a reasonable way to frame players' careers and to judge athletes? PK, I want to start with you. As of last night, Connor McDavid continues to be without a ring. People will tell me, people who know, I don't pretend to know nearly as much about hockey as most people who follow it ardently, will tell me he's as good as any player that ever lived. Is it reasonable to hold against him the fact that he doesn't have a cup and the Gretzkys and all the other guys at the very top of the list do?
Well, for me, I don't think there's any point in playing sports if it's not about winning a championship. You play to win. I dreamt about winning a Stanley Cup. Even though I didn't get one, My dream was to win a cup. It wasn't to drive around in an Escalade. It wasn't to wear nice tailored suits. It wasn't to have the nicest watch. It wasn't to score a bunch of points. It was to win a championship. Now, whether you win one or not, we know it doesn't always happen. But to consider yourself the greatest, to me, you got to win a championship. And it doesn't matter what sport you're in. Some sports, it's more difficult than others. But we can't sit here and say that, oh, I want to be the greatest even though I didn't win. No. As hockey players in our sport, it's all about winning. Nothing's more important. Listen, last night I sat there and had to watch guys win the cup. I can't stand watching guys hoist that thing because all of us want to do it. But not everybody can. So you got to respect the game. The game, no one is bigger than the game in hockey. No one is bigger than that trophy. Nothing matters more than that trophy. That's in our sport. I can't speak to everything else. In our sport, nothing's more important.
I get it, but the question is it a reasonable way to judge the greatness of a player?
No,
because there's a difference between saying the championship is the most important thing and the championship is the only thing that matters. That is the problem, right? That's what LeBron James is talking about, is the perception that all that matters is the championship, like that there's no other way of accomplishing greatness. And I think that's, when I covered the Yankees, the Joe Torre, Derek Jeter Yankees, every year in spring training, you'd ask Jeter, what do you think of last season, the year you had last year? Well, did we win the World Series? No, then it wasn't a good year. And I used to think, what a terrible way to live. Like it was like you play for 6 months. You had 2 months of spring training, a 6-month season, a month of playoffs, and you come up short. You lose Game 7 of the World Series. You had a great year, right? But that drove him. I understand that.
But that's what
that makes sense,
right? But that's it right there, Gross. That's what team sports is about. It's the psychotic drive to win a championship, and nothing else really matters. And look, if we're talking about Roger Federer and Tiger Woods, those individual sports, like that's one thing. But in a team sport, like greatness is about impacting others. So I can tell you I've been to 3 championship games and fallen short. And to this day, like I can tell you the exact moment I knew we were going to lose and how much it hurt to this day, like to what PK's saying. Like that's what you sign up for, like to win championships.
Understood.
And
let's try and stay where, I get what you're saying. What you're saying is every person in sports feels that way. But the question is, LeBron is saying, Charles Barkley, Allen Iverson, Steve Nash, Barry Bonds, are they not great because they didn't win the whole thing? What's the answer to that?
No, look, they are great despite not winning the whole thing. Okay, look, and it's 2 different conversations really that we're having here. And the one I can draw the parallel to is this. Is anybody going to sit here and tell me in their right mind that Barry Sanders is not one of the greatest athletes to ever walk the face of this earth, regardless of just being a football player?
Right.
They came close to maybe, advancing through the playoffs.
Not that close.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But my point
you're right.
But my point being, you wouldn't have a discussion about great players in the NFL without including Barry Sanders. But this is a different discussion. This is a very, when you're talking about winning, that's a different kind of discussion, right? And that's where the conversation always kind of gets a little bit sideways when we talk about Tom Brady, when we're referencing guys like Dan Marino, when we're referencing, guys like a Joe Burrow, or even, like right now, a guy like Lamar Jackson, who hasn't won a championship, but who's one of the most talented players ever to play a position. It's 2 totally different conversations.
I get it. And go ahead, Dan.
The championship, so much goes into it. Is Tom Brady that much better because Russell Wilson threw an interception on a 1-yard line in the Super Bowl? Brady wasn't even on the field. That's a Brady ring. Right? If that pass is completed or if they score some other way, Brady has 6 championships, not 7. Like that, and I get that's an extreme example, Brady.
Yep.
But the point is, you can do everything. It can be the defining aspect of your life. I need to win a championship. I do everything right. And then the ball or the puck bounces the wrong way, and all of a sudden you don't. And that doesn't make you any less of a player.
You just
it doesn't.
You just gave the description of why it's so precious when you do win it.
Yes.
Like what Wendy said, like Wendy's seeing these guys.
Special.
Right. And it's really hard to achieve.
But let's just, to put it back into what LeBron said, he almost framed it himself. Was Charles Barkley an all-time great player?
Yeah.
Was Karl Malone an all-time great player?
Yes.
Was Patrick Ewing great player?
Yes.
Was Michael Jordan better? Why?
Well, because
he beat them every damn year. That's why. Because he won the championships and they didn't.
It takes the conversation to a whole new level.
Yes.
When you win, which is really the whole purpose, as PK is saying, of playing sports. That's why they have scoreboards. That's why they count.
But it's also the way that he won. He made his teammates better. He went through it. We watched it happen. Like that as an athlete
that's part
means
of
more
changing
than
the
anything.
conversation.
To me,
right?
that means more than anything.
If you want to compare Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, look at Tom Brady in Tampa Bay and look at Aaron Rodgers since he left Green Bay. Like one had success past New England, the other didn't have success past Green Bay.
But even that difference doesn't guarantee one's going to win a title and the other.
How you win
matters.
matters. How you win one matters to me.
And we tend to only hold certain people to this standard because they have to be the greatest of the great. And to your point, it doesn't apply to running backs.
Right.
It applies to quarterbacks.
Right.
It applies to NBA stars, and I think it applies to the greatest of the all-time
and that's
hockey
exactly
players.
why it's never going to be an apples-to-apples comparison.
Right.
It never will
Correct.
be.
All right, we'll leave it here. It's such an interesting discussion. We thank LeBron for bringing it up. Top of the hour, get up. It is a way back Wednesday. Mike Breen, do the honors.
James catches, puts up a three. Won't go. Rebound Bosch. Back out to Allen. His three-pointer. Bang! Tie game with 5 seconds remaining. Spurs do not have a timeout.
Ray Allen on this day in 2003, one of the most clutch shots in NBA history. We were there. They were already bringing out the trophy to give it to the San Antonio Spurs. They had cordoned off the area, the ropes there in that corner.
I just remember the fans leaving.
Well, and they couldn't get back in the building. Ray Allen told me, though, that the biggest part of that whole play is Chris Bosh's rebound.
Of course.
That ball, if you look at it, almost tipped out of his hands right there. And he grabs it with 2 hands, and that saved everything, that rebound.
It's very unselfish of Ray to put it that way. I think the most incredible thing about this play is him keeping his heels from touching the ground. If you've seen the legendary photo, his heels would have been out of bounds, but he never touches his heels. He shoots that ball just off the tips of his toes. It's one of the great moments in basketball history. Let's see if we have any of those in store for Game 6 and maybe 7 of these finals. So with that thought in mind, let's play Fact or Fiction. Monica McNutt.
Okay.
If I said the Pacers are going to force a Game 7, is that fact or fiction?
This one's fiction for me, Greeny.
What was that?
Mostly, because I have a ton of respect for the Pacers, and they could. But for me, this is fiction because I picked this series to go 6 out of understanding who this Thunder team, could be and who they could elevate to be. And I think the difference from Game 5 to Game 1 for them is a team that's going to close out in 6.
Let's go around the league. Alan, if I said the Grizzlies should trade Ja Morant, is that fact or fiction?
If you mean right now, it's fiction because there's a lot of questions about Ja Morant around the league. One of them is actually a curiosity of it. Who got Taylor Jenkins fired? Were you part of this decision? I think right now there's too much off the court going on with Ja Morant. You want to get him back on the court. You want to get him playing, get his value up so you can get the most for him if you want to move.
And then, Monica, back to you. If I said Kevin Durant would make the Timberwolves title favorites, is that fact or fiction?
This one's fiction for me because as we worked on this segment yesterday, favorite meant the favorite, the single favorite. I can't give them that quickly. I think it takes a minute for stars to kind of gel. And then you can't throw the Thunder if they go on a closeout tonight or in 7 games. You can't throw the Thunder out of the equation.
Well, let's talk more about Kevin Durant, shall we? Jay Williams was on this show yesterday. He had this assessment about KD's impact.
It's going to sound harsh, but it's just reality of it. Like, he's not going to be the guy you're going to build around for the next 5 years. He's a high-end ancillary piece that can be additive to a championship team.
So I did an essay earlier this morning that is currently blowing up on Twitter X, and I ran through all of the things. I can't argue that Kevin Durant isn't someone you build around for 5 more years. He's going to be 37. I cannot sit here and tell you that 5 years from now, he's going to be the key to a championship puzzle. I can, however, tell you that his numbers suggest he is playing every bit as well right now on both ends of the floor as he ever has in his career. So to me, the answer to the question on the screen, can Durant be the best player on a championship team, is yes. Now, if there's one thing we've learned in the modern NBA, Brian Windhorst, it's that no one player can win a championship. The sport has become more about the bench and the others and the depth.
Build around.
But can KD be the single best player on a championship team? To me, the answer is definitively yes. What do you think, Windman?
Well, let's look at the teams that are on his list. I think he's got Miami on there because he is attracted by the city and Pat Riley. It's certainly not the team. So let's put them aside. Let's look at Houston and San Antonio. He would be the number 1 offensive option on those 2 teams. Now, I don't know about best player, Greeny. I don't know if that's what he's looking for at age 37. but he certainly would join those two teams and make them way more dynamic offensively, particularly Houston, who is an elite defensive team that had difficulty getting isolation and individual scoring. And so he certainly believes, by looking at those two teams, that he can be a very high-level member of a contending team. And so I'm going to listen to what he says there, and that's why I think Houston especially has got their eyebrow up. I'm not sure they're willing to pay a massive price for a 37-year-old when the rest of their team is in its early to mid-20s. But I think Houston should definitely be considered still in this race, especially if Minnesota doesn't close.
I think depending on what they have to give up, and if teams believe they are renting him, meaning he only has 1 year left on his deal, that price might be lower. All other things being equal, if you just add Kevin Durant to what Houston had this year, to me, they do become 1 and 1A with OKC for next year.
Ooh, I don't know about 1A and 1.
I mean, they were the 2 seed this year.
They had a great finish.
Yeah, they
Very
did have a great finish. Here's the offense for them at times was at best anemic, right? And KD obviously would immediately solve that. The idea of dropping him in, yes, but the idea of doing a trade, I think you're going to take a little bit of a hit on one end, and that would probably be on the defensive side of the basketball. I don't think anybody is disillusioned about who KD is. Again, it's how well is it going to fit? What is sort of the immediate plan versus the long-term plan? And then what do you have to give up?
You're asking the question, can he be the best player on a championship team?
Mm-hmm.
The answer is yes, definitively yes. But does he have to be the lead player? Does he have to be the leader of that team? Does he have to be the most important figure on that team? No. He can be the most talented, best player in the moments, and you saw like the Rockets stuff there. That was great numbers there. Clutch time with the Rockets. They struggled in it. He's the perfect guy for clutch time. He could bring you home. But you don't need him to be the face of your franchise.
Right.
That's the part. If you have the right build already and then you drop him in, he just has to be Kevin Durant. You're not asking him to now change the locker room culture, be the face of the franchise, talk to the media. No, just do what you do best. We've already got other stuff taken care of, which is why the Knicks part was so intriguing and why Minnesota is so intriguing.
Right. I think as we were talking through this some last night, the idea that he would be sort of the lone multi-time all-star, that to me is what you're getting into now, right? Like, he could be number one, but the guy next to him has also been a fringe all-NBA guy, like is an all-star caliber guy. Like, the distance between him and the rest of the squad, he's not at a place where I think he could just drag a bunch of Joes.
What I said earlier. His contemporaries are LeBron James and Steph Curry. He's a little younger than Steph. He's much younger than LeBron. Their games haven't fallen off that substantially, and neither has his. And we somehow view him very differently, and I get there are a lot of reasons why. I think someone might be making a great move if they find a way to get Kevin Durant. Meanwhile, we still have this season to finish up. Game 6 NBA Finals tomorrow night.
By this time next week, we will have a new champion. We will have a new member of the Rings Club in basketball history. Rings culture, of course, has been pervasive throughout sports media for about a decade at least, maybe even longer than that. And LeBron James, in the latest episode of the Mind the Game podcast with Steve Nash, was taking some listener questions on the show. One of them was, hey, LeBron, you got 4 rings. Why don't you tell us your thoughts on Rings culture? Take a listen.
It's funny, I don't know. I don't know why it's discussed so much in our sport and why it's the A-all, B-all of everything. You sit here and you tell me, you know, Allen Iverson and Charles Barkley and Steve Nash, you know, our wasn't unbelievable. Like, oh, they can't be talked about or discussed with these guys is because this guy won 1 ring or won 2 rings or won, like, it's just weird to me. It's like saying Peyton Manning can't be in the same room with Brady or Mahomes because he only has 1 ring. They don't never discuss that in their sport.
Right.
Or telling me that Dan Marino is not the greatest slinger of all time. Or he can't be in the room with those guys because he didn't win a championship. They don't discuss those things.
Once again, if he had enough rings to be considered the greatest, it would be okay. This is a typical LeBron. He doesn't feel like he's going to get there, and that's going to be held against him, so now he's going to downplay the ring. If it wasn't about that, LeBron, and if Steve Nash had any kind of...
Stop expecting him to
okay? No, if he had anything, then I would have said, LeBron, why did you leave Cleveland and go to Miami? chasing rings.
Cleveland!
You're the one who did it. You're the one who ran away. You're the one who put together a super team so that you can win rings. You were the one who were afraid not to win a championship. As great as you were as a player.
Not 2, not 3.
That's right.
Not 4,
now he's saying,
not
listen
5,
to this.
Not 6.
Is he talking
not
about
7.
being a great
And when I
player?
say that,
He's
I
talking
really
about
believe it.
winning rings because that's what he wanted to win. He's such a phony. I'm so tired of hearing this. On one hand, he's talking about, I don't know why we're talking about rings or whatever. He's the one. Kelvin, that wasn't somebody imitating him. He's the one talking up about 7 rings. He's the one who left Cleveland, his hometown, and went to go chase rings in Miami. He's the one who keeps leaving, who came to L.A. to chase rings because he looked at Michael Jordan. And if you look at Michael Jordan's career and you think it's just about rings, you're mistaken. Michael Jordan was a great player, led the league in scoring 10 times. I could go over and over the all-time leading scorer in the postseason. It was more than just the 6 rings. This whole notion. And if Steve Nash had anything, he could have said, LeBron, Peyton did win 2 championships. Well, Peyton only got 1.
Yeah,
they didn't even know.
He forgot that Denver one.
Exactly. But my point is, this is total garbage on LeBron's point. What on part? The only reason if LeBron had 8 or 10 rings, you think he would be talking about the number of rings people counting? Of course he would not. Such a phony. I'm so tired of hearing guys make an excuse when it doesn't fit their narrative. He has to be able to talk about longevity and all this other stuff to be able to be considered great. It's not that you have to win a ring to be great. Okay? You can be a great player. I'll sit here and tell you Charles Barkley was a great player. Steve Nash won 2 MVPs. No one's going to say he wasn't a great player in the NBA. But when you talk about the greatest of all time, I don't know of anybody who's the greatest of anything who didn't win at some point in their life. Dan Marino was a hell of a quarterback. I'm going to sit here and tell you he's the best quarterback ever and he never won? Come on, man. Nobody. How many times do I have to bring up Marv Levy? He went to 4 straight Super Bowls as a coach.
Not 3.
4. Not one time have I ever heard anybody say Marv Levy's the greatest coach in NFL history. You know why? Because he didn't win. That's why we keep score. That's why we hand out trophies. It does matter. Stop trying to say that winning doesn't matter. It does matter when you're talking about putting somebody ahead of everybody and saying they're the greatest that ever did something. That's all I'm saying.
I actually agree with that last statement. I think when you're talking about the pantheons, right? I got to start to nitpick LeBron, a Kobe. I got to start bringing those things up. But I'm going to reverse it here. So let me reverse and start from the beginning here, from where you just ended it. I do believe there was a genesis. I do believe there was a point when something kind of changed. And I think when you just mentioned LeBron leaving, I think a large part of why he was leaving was this. I think LeBron, we knew the talent was there. He's MVPs. He went to the finals in 2007, but he loses. And I think all he starts to hear, because this modern era is the advent of debate shows daily, every single day. The advent of social media, this is hearing things, these conversations daily. And we all know LeBron gets in the league, he becomes the hot topic. LeBron, the Cowboys, and the Lakers or Yankees, make sure you watch, rinse, repeat, say that every week, every day, the greatest hits. And so I think when he starts to hear, oh, he's not a Kobe. Well, he scores more than Kobe. He's a better passer than Kobe. Well, he's not a Kobe because Kobe won. Well, he can't be Jordan because Jordan won. And I think what starts to happen with him was shoot, I can be MVPs. I can be in the finals and lose. I can be an all-star. My team can win 55, 60 games, but if I don't win, people are going to never put me on this place. So I have to go to find and win because Cleveland obviously didn't put anything around him at that time. So I think he jumped ship, and I think that same thing happened to Kevin Durant. Well, dang, I'm starting balling out. I'm an all-star, second best player in the league for all these years. I've been to the finals, back in 2011, but 2012. But no one's going to say anything about this unless I win. I think we started to have where these guys were so worried about if I don't win, and I started to freak out because I do believe the ring culture started to be a conversation. When we were back in the day, there's somebody who said Wilt Chamberlain was the best player in the league ever. Best player ever was? Wilt Chamberlain. He had a ring. Bill Russell had 11, but they felt Wilt Chamberlain was more dominant. He's the best player in the league. Somebody said Larry Bird. Hold on. I'll let you talk for quite a bit. Larry Bird was the best player in the ever to them, a lot of people. Well, he had 1, then he had 2, then he had 3. And for them, that was what they saw. I remember Reggie Miller being that guy. He could have been your favorite player, and people would have been like, oh, that's your favorite player? Okay, cool. Like, no, man, Michael Jordan be giving it to him. But the end conversation was never always rings. I do think we've gotten obsessed with rings over the last 15 years. We've gotten lazy with our contextualizing things. We've gotten lazy with our analysis where you go, Shaq can't even get something for Chuck. Let me tell you something. I got 4 rings. You don't have any. And it becomes lazy. Everything. Well, he's got 5 rings. Well, he's got 6 rings. Well, he's got 3 rings. He hadn't won a ring. That's the laziest thing. So I do believe, I agree, that is a massive part of the equation. And if you start nitpicking, if I'm talking about Steph, I'm talking about Kareem, I'm talking about Hakeem, you got to start having those conversations, right? The little bit, okay, he's better here. He has more rings. That's a part of the equation. But I do believe there are some people that close their eyes blindly and go, well, he's got more rings. Who he's got more rings? Because that's all they've heard from debate shows. That's all they've heard on social media for the last 15, 20 years. Yawn is so boring, and there's no ability to contextualize or have a conversation, with nuanced conversation. I absolutely strongly believe that people have done that. And my last point, and I think this is a compliment to somebody in particular. I think this is a compliment to Kobe Bryant. You say how? I'll tell you how. Kobe Bryant was the first real person that we saw that you could legitimately have a conversation. Is he on par with Jordan? Harold Miner, baby Jordan, get out of here. Grant Hill, he's the next Jordan. Heck of a player, not that. Allen Iverson, no, he's heck of a player, not that. Kobe Bryant was the first person you started to go, look like him, talk like him, sound like him, chew gum like him, same size, shoot like him, fade away like him. Oh, shoot. He just won 3 straight rings just like him. And it was the first time we started to have a conversation of, could he be the next Jordan? Could he be as good? Could he be better? He's even younger because he came straight out of high school. And immediately we start saying, no, he can't because Jordan has 6. Okay, well, let Kobe keep going. Then he gets 4. Then he gets 5. Well, he's already lost a couple times, so he can never be Jordan. And it started that conversation. Then LeBron comes. Is he better than Kobe? No, because Kobe had 5. And that's when it started because Kobe was so good to great that we started to question, dang, is he better than Mike? And we had to hurry up and rationalize why he couldn't be. To me, I agree that it's a part of the conversation for sure. But people have gotten lazy, Rob, and make it the end all be all.
I disagree. I think it fits people's narrative. If LeBron was 10-0 in the finals, there's no way he'd sit here and tell you about rings. The reason that Wilt Chamberlain never really got the credit that he deserves and broke all the records is because he didn't win enough. Not that he didn't win enough to dominate as much as he did. People thought he should have won more, and that's what hurt him. When you're talking about the greatest, this is not a conversation of whether somebody's good. Nobody's going to question whether Charles Barkley was a great player or Steve Nash has 2 MVPs. It's about the greatest of all time.
But that wasn't the conversation,
No,
though.
That is the conversation.
No, because I'm agreeing. What I'm saying is
that's the only time that you take everything into consideration and you nitpick when you want to crown somebody as the greatest.
But I think
the ring culture. Nah, it's not just.
But see,
that's
Rob,
the only thing that matters because that's not true.
No, I'm actually with you on that last part. When I am talking about the greatest of the greats, I have to do that.
How in the world do you call somebody the greatest of all time, and it doesn't matter if he won or not?
But I don't think that's the overall context of what was being said here. I think what we're doing is immediately dismissing Chris Paul as one of the best players. He didn't win a ring. He didn't win. And so not the greatest. I agree with you on the greatest conference because now I have to nitpick, okay, well, how many this or how many that? Because we're talking the thinnest of
other great
players.
It's not that Chris Paul isn't a great player. But I'm serious. I'm going to discount Isaiah Thomas for Chris Paul when Isaiah Thomas won championships, didn't have another top 50 player. I mean, like there's more to it. It ain't just that Isaiah won 2. Okay? It's a lot more than that. And that's what's lazy is when people talk about play. It ain't just that.
But that's what I'm saying. But a lot of people do that now, Rob. That's the culture now.
I disagree.
So
I was on those debate
like
shows for 20 years.
And they started. That's when it started.
And that is not all it was. We never sat there and just because what conversation would there really be?
Who's better
if
to
it's
you?
just about ring? What conversation would
Rob,
we have?
You've done these sports debate shows.
I told you I've been on all of them,
and that's what I'm saying. They do that because it goes on. Will he get more rings? Will he get more rings? Who has more? Does he need to win another ring? Ring. Let me ask you this: Who? And this is a genuine question. This isn't a debating question. I'm not trying to set you up. I'm really asking your opinion.
Disagree.
Who's better? Who would you rather have, Kevin Garnett or Charles Barkley? There's no wrong. I'm literally just asking. So this ain't a setup or nothing.
Charles Barkley,
who didn't win a ring. Do you know how many people would never say that?
I don't know how, because I'm just.
But you get what I'm saying, Rob G. You feel me? They would say never say that because their immediate default, because they've been trained and wired. They've been trained and wired the last 15 years ago. He don't have any rings. Kevin Garnett, why? Because he got a ring. Dirk or Charles Barkley? Dirk, why? He wanted. Did you see that run? He had a ring.
Nah.
And you must not have never saw Charles Barkley play in your life.
That's just
and that's where we've gotten. I think that's the conversation.
No, what you're doing is you're letting LeBron off the hook, which is if this ring thing was in his favor, I swear to you, he would not be on that talking about the ring that rings don't matter. This is because he's lost so many. And in a lot of people's mind, he's lost more than he's won.
Oh, without a doubt.
And if that wasn't the case, and if LeBron was also 6-0 and the all-time leading scorer and whatnot, he would not be trying to discount the rings. He only discounts it.
Like, Walker Kessler has been linked to the Los Angeles Lakers for years, but the Utah Jazz had never been all too keen to part with their young center. That stance appears to have changed this offseason, and Lakers insider Dave McMenamin reported on the Drive with Spence checkers that the team still has an interest in the big man. Walker Kessler remains a name that the Lakers are intrigued by, McMenamin said. Whether that would lead to any sort of deal? Obviously, last year the asking price was too steep, and obviously the Lakers ended up pivoting those assets that they were considering moving to the Jazz to get Kessler in order to do the Luka trade. That came off the table after the Luka trade, McMenamin continued. But if they do revisit it, that remains a player that the Lakers feel could fit the void that they have at center. Again, I'm not reporting anything's moving towards or picking up steam or anything like that, but Kessler remains on the Lakers' radar. Kessler averaged 11.1 points, 12.2 rebounds, 1.7 assists, 0.6 steals, and 2.4 blocks per game for the Jazz in 2024-25. The 23-year-old would be a great addition to the Lakers and would solve their biggest problem from this past season, which was the center spot. Host Spence Checkers followed up by asking McMenamin what kind of package the Lakers could put on the table for Kessler. They do have a 2031 first-round draft pick they could trade, and then Dalton Knecht, who had a really good first half of the season, and then not so great second half, McMenamin stated. Looked more like a rookie in the second half of the season, and really wasn't trusted by JJ Redick in the high-leverage moments in the playoffs. And you, fan, what do you think about Walker Kessler's situation? Leave your opinion in the comments.